Blissful Badger. In my quest to have all of the map filled with the different inner sphere main forces and having representation of the main mercenary units and everything, I am going into the next one. So, ever since I heard about the Locust 1v2, I knew I was going to have a Marian Hegemony force. So, today, I'm going to bring you through the process of working those up and getting them on the table. So, I knew I wanted to do the Locust 1v2, which is a custom model. So I found a decent 3D printable Locust 1v2 and had some made for me. And then I also realized that with some research, they use sentries and maniples instead of lances. So, since locusts are so low in points, I figured I could do a sentry, or I could do 2 sentries, so a maniple, or, my Clan Ghost Bear star is like 12,000 point value. So what if I did 2 maniples for the Marian Hegemony? So I decided that was going to be what I was going to do. So what did I choose as my mechs? Let's go check them out. All right. So I knew I wanted the Locust 1v2s as the main force, because having 4 rocket launcher 10s available for a nice big alpha strike and a medium laser on a fairly decently fast mech, yeah, this was a great idea. So I decided that each sentry would have 4 Locust 1v2s, and then I would do 1 mech to go in charge of that. So I chose a commando for one of the leaders. Nice little commando. And then I chose a Jenner as the other leader. So I feel that in this situation, I have the person in charge of a sentry and the person in charge of the 2. So, overall, not too bad. And having a maniple of light mechs makes sense for scouting and everything. But what do they do when they need a little bit heavier reinforcement, but maybe we don't have quite as many mechs available? Well, call in the vehicles. And here we have my 2 sentries of vehicles. So I found a really cool 3D print option for a 6-wheeled vehicle. So I had a couple of different weapon options made, and I decided that I could run them as 40-ton Hetzers. As the Hetzer is a wheeled vehicle, having 6 is perfectly fine compared to the 4 that is shown on all of the pictures. And it also has the ability to take 2 LRM-15s, 5 SRM-6s, an AC-10, or 4 medium lasers. So I have 2 of each of those options, and I have the missile launcher options with an LRM carrier, as my leader there, and my energy weapon options, AC-10 and medium lasers, my direct fire options at least, have a Manticore. And with no upgrades across these 20 units, it comes to 12,587 BV2, which isn't actually that much for 20 units. So this gives me some leeway in how I build my forces when playing on the table, but I can also up some of the gunnery and piloting. It makes sense that my Locusts might want to go with piloting 4. They're supposed to be going really fast, and I don't want them to skid out or anything. And some of these missile carrier vehicles might actually like a slightly higher gunnery. If they're just lobbing missiles from a distance, or at least these 3 are, maybe give them slightly better gunnery and leave them in the back line, So there's some options there. So I think the next step is color selection. And after some random selections of colors and trying out different options on a piece of primed cardboard, because it was there, I decided I really liked the look, after it dried, of the Beastly Brown color, which is the top, and the Orange Brown, which is in the center, as a trim color. So that is the color selection I'm going to go with. And then the cockpits and everything will get a slightly different color. The normal metallic blue that I go with. And I can do, the tires in a shiny black. And I think this will be a nice 2 maniples painted up. So yeah, now I need to get around to painting these. And for that, I'm going to do the first part with the dry brush. So I'm going to go through and dry brush everything with the Beastly Brown. And then I'll get back with you. Alright, and this is what it looks like after a dry brush of Beastly Brown. As you can see, the dry brush doesn't pick up all the details, but it does give good shadow and allows to have all of the little recessed panels be nice and dark. This allows you that you don't need to do a wash afterwards to get those dark recesses. It'll have a better overall depth to it, and you can go brighter with your main colors without worrying that they'll get nice and dark. Of course, you can always go back and do a wash anyway to redefine those, because if you water down your paint a little bit too much when dry brushing, you can get a little bit more fade in the look. It'll go over everything instead of being a little bit cleaner. This was a little bit too thin, and you can see some of the paint went into the recesses instead. So I might need to go back and do a second coat on these guys. But overall, this is the first color, and I'll probably touch up a couple of them before I go to the edge highlighting with the orange brown. Alright, edge highlighting and detail panels are done. Now that I've done that, I can get to the black tires and the metallics. And that should make these pop just a little bit more. So these mechs are painted up. All of the colors are down. All of the tires and treads are taken care of, and they're black. And then there's a little bit of silver for the rims and everything. So now, I haven't done this for some of my other BattleTech minis, but for the Marian Hegemony and going forward, I think I'm going to base them. So because of the camo that I have going here, I'm going to blend them in and make them fairly good by using Vallejo Brown Earth texture paste, which isn't an exact match, but is a decent color for the ground. And I am also going to use beige and copper brown mini tufts, because at 2mm it looks like extremely tall grass against a normal mech. Previously I had tufts that were much larger, and I didn't think that they would actually work properly for the scale. But with the 2mm, I think it'll work quite well. So I'm going to go base all of these, and then I'll come back with the final project completed. And there we have it. 2 full maniples of Marian Hegemony models. These guys look great. I love how they blend together with the ground cover. And it only took a few tufts, actually, for 20 bases. One of the benefits of 2mm tufts on a 1¼ inch base, yeah? So, they've got a nice camo-like pattern. Not quite camo, but properly colored for the environment. And they look pretty nice. I'm looking forward to getting these on the table at some point. Again, I have 13,000 points, give or take. And I can drop a couple of vehicles or locusts if necessary. And I'm curious how 20 models all going after, say, 5 or 6 might react. So, this was a fun little project. Little. And I really like how they came out. Can't wait to see what my next BattleTech project will be. Subscribe if you haven't, so that you don't miss any future videos. I also want to thank my patrons and supporters for making these videos possible. And until next time, I hope you find your bit of bliss.